Patek Philippe, the watch only billionaires can afford. Even with money, there's a comfortable lie that almost everyone believes, that money buys everything. The more money, the more doors open. But this belief begins to crumble when someone discovers that there are objects in the world that they refuse money, even when it comes in obscene quantities. And that's where the Patek Philippe comes in, not as a watch, but as a silent test of patience, ego, and long-term vision. The most provocative thing is this: there are billionaires capable of buying islands, companies, and entire governments, but who can't afford a simple watch. Not because they lack money, but because they lack something rarer: emotional time, discipline, poise, and an understanding of the invisible game of power. Paradoxical, isn't it? It's precisely those who are in less of a hurry who tend to go the furthest. Perhaps the biggest mistake people make is confusing luxury with ostentation. True luxury doesn't shout, doesn't demand attention, and doesn't seek validation. It observes and selects. While many believe that success is about speed, there are circles where winning means knowing how to wait, and when you understand why a Patek isn't sold but given as a gift, you begin to see the world of money, status, and time in a completely different way. The uncomfortable truth: why money isn't enough to buy a Patek Philippe. There's a comfortable illusion in the collective imagination that money opens all doors. But curiously, when the subject is Patek Philippe, however, this logic simply crumbles. No matter the bank balance, the private jet, or the surname emblazoned on billionaire rankings, walking into a boutique and leaving with a Patek on your wrist isn't so simple. And this disconcerts many powerful people because, for the first time, money ceases to be the protagonist of the story. In practice, what happens is almost embarrassing for those who have always bought everything without resistance. The salesperson isn't impressed, doesn't speed up the process, doesn't change their tone. On the contrary, they observe, listen, and silently decide whether that person should even be there. There are real cases of millionaires who heard a polite no without any further explanation. It's not disdain, it's strategy. The brand doesn't sell watches, it grants access. It's like an invisible club, with no registration website and no rule book. Those who understand realize quickly: money may start the conversation, but it doesn't close the deal. There's something else being evaluated: attitude, track record, patience, long-term vision, and that's precisely where the unease begins that leads to the next point. Because if money doesn't decide, then who does after all? Did you like this introduction, or would you like to adjust the tone, the pace, or delve deeper into a particular point? The secret of intentional scarcity: how the brand controls who can own its pieces. The first thing an experienced mentor would teach here is simple, almost obvious, and precisely for that reason ignored. Nothing valuable can be abundant. Patek Philippe, she understood this decades ago and took the concept to the extreme. They have the technology, the demand, and the money to produce more watches. But they don't. And it's not due to inability. It's a cold, calculated, strategic choice. Every year, the brand deliberately limits its production to something around a few tens of thousands of pieces worldwide. Now think about it. The number of millionaires and billionaires is growing, but the number of Pateks isn't keeping pace. It's like trying to buy a masterpiece knowing that the artist decided to paint fewer paintings on purpose. The result? Growing desire, elegant frustration, and a symbolic value that doesn't depend on advertising. In practice, this creates a curious power reversal. The buyer doesn't choose the watch chooses the buyer. Scarcity becomes a natural filter, almost a silent initiation ritual. And that's where the story starts to get even more selective, because when there are few objects, Someone has to decide who you deserve to have them, and that decision leads directly to the next topic. Did you like this development, or would you like to adjust something in terms of depth, examples, or language? The buyer selection process: how to become worthy of a Patek. Here's a point that many wealthy people prefer to pretend doesn't exist. Reputation is also currency. It's not enough to show up with new money, speaking loudly, or trying to impress. The game is different. The brand silently observes who you are, how you behave, how long you wait without complaining, and most importantly, whether you understand the value of time, not the clock, but the philosophy behind it. Does that sound like an exaggeration? Well, that's exactly where many fail. In practice, the ideal buyer usually has a history. They have already purchased other watches from the brand, built relationships with boutiques, and demonstrated patience and respect for the process. Some spend years buying less sought-after models before even being considered for a rare piece. It's almost like an invisible career. Each purchase is a step. Each wait is a test. Those who try to skip steps are usually politely ignored. A simple example helps to understand. It's like someone who wants to enter a closed circle of experienced investors. It's no use showing up, offering money. First, you listen, learn, and prove that you think long-term. It works the same way here. The watch isn't a trophy for immediate ostentation, but a symbol of maturity, vision, and self-control. And when that filter starts to work, even more absurd stories emerge, especially when the subject is waiting. Do you want to continue, or would you prefer to adjust something before we move forward? The surreal waiting lists. Billionaires begging for years for a watch. Here, the psychological game reaches another level. People accustomed to solving everything in minutes discover that they can wait 5, 8, 10 years without any guarantee whatsoever. This is not an exaggeration, nor an urban legend. There are waiting lists that seem more like a test of character than a commercial process. And the most curious thing, the rarer the model, the less information the buyer receives. No date, no deadline, no clear status. Just silence. This silence, incidentally, is part of the strategy. Those who call too much, pressure, or try to find a way around things tend to be negatively marked. Those who wait in silence, buy other models, maintain an elegant posture, and don't show anxiety, gain invisible points. It's almost ironic. The time the clock measures becomes the very proof of worthiness. Those who can't stand waiting aren't ready to use it. There are accounts of billionaires who gave up halfway through, not for lack of money, but because of a wound to their ego. Waiting became humiliation disguised as privilege. And it is precisely at this point that the watch ceases to be an object and becomes a psychological symbol. Because when someone finally receives the call, they discover that they are not just buying a watch, but carrying an entire story on their wrist. And some of these stories are as rare as they are disturbing. A perfect topic for the next section. Did you like it, or do you want to adjust something before moving on? The rarest models and their hidden stories. Not every Patek is made to be seen. Some models are made almost like industrial secrets, known only to silent collectors and families who would never appear in a common shop window. There are watches produced in such small quantities that they don't even reach double digits per year, and others that don't even appear in public catalogs. These are pieces that circulate through invitations, private conversations, and almost whispered recommendations. What's most interesting isn't just the physical rarity, but the history embedded within it. Many of these watches were commissioned by traditional families, industrial leaders, or financial dynasties who requested minimal alterations. A detail on the dial, a specific complication, an almost invisible symbol. It's like a suit tailored by a man who never puts his name on the label. Those who see it don't understand. Those who understand respect it. A mentor would say this teaches something powerful about true status. What truly matters doesn't need explaining. These pieces don't shout, don't shine excessively, and don't demand attention. They exist for those who know how to recognize depth, not appearance. And when someone realizes that a simple detail on the wrist can carry generations of decisions, power, and silence, they begin to understand why the impact of a Patek goes far beyond the object itself. And it's precisely this invisible impact that changes everything in the next point. Do you want to continue, or would you prefer to adjust something here? The psychological impact. Why a Patek changes your status, even when no one is watching. Here's something that few admit out loud. The true effect of a Patek isn't external, it's internal. It wasn't made to attract attention at a restaurant table or garner praise on social media. Most of the time, it goes unnoticed. But those who wear it know. And this silent awareness changes posture, behavior, and even how a person presents themselves to the world. It's a type of status that doesn't need validation. There's a curious psychological phenomenon in all of this. When someone goes through years of waiting, criteria, frustrations, and finally receives the piece, the watch becomes a daily reminder of self-control and long-term vision. It's almost like an invisible diploma. It doesn't prove immediate wealth, but discipline, patience, and belonging to a level where time is treated with respect. And that, let's face it, changes anyone's mindset. A simple example helps to understand. It's like someone who builds solid wealth quietly while others flaunt quick gains. One seems slow, the other seems brilliant, until time reveals who truly won. Patek reinforces this mentality every day on the wrist without needing to say a word. And when the psychological impact is this strong, something even more inevitable arises. People trying to cheat the system from the outside. And that's where we enter the territory of the parallel market. Do you want to follow suit? Or would you prefer to adjust something beforehand? The parallel market and prices that defy logic. When access is too limited, the market finds shortcuts. And here begins one of the most distorted chapters of this story. In the parallel market, some Patek models appear with prices 2, 3, even 5 times higher than the official price. And the most shocking thing, even so, there are buyers. Not because it's rational, but because the anxiety of having it now speaks louder than the patience to wait years. But there's an invisible price to pay for all of this. Those who buy outside the official system might get the watch, but they lose something essential: the connection with the brand. No history, no relationship, no recognition. It's like entering a club through the back door. You're inside, but you don't truly belong. Many discover too late that, after this purchase, the official doors close even further. An experienced mentor would say this is a classic test between impulse and long-term vision. The parallel market reveals who wants immediate status and who understands the whole game. Because, in the end, paying more doesn't guarantee belonging, only momentary possession. And when that realization hits, an uncomfortable question arises. If not every owner is accepted, then what does it really mean to own a Patek? That's exactly where the brand's philosophy comes into play in the next topic. Want to follow or adjust something before we move on? The brand's philosophy. You never own it, you just care for it for the next generation. There's a silent phrase that echoes behind every Patek. You don't buy a watch for yourself. You become its temporary guardian. This idea completely changes the relationship with the object. It's not about quick consumption or immediate pleasure. It's about responsibility. It's about being aware that it will endure decades, perhaps centuries, passing through hands that don't even exist yet. And that, let's face it, changes the way we look at time. When someone understands this philosophy, something clicks inside. The watch ceases to be a symbol of individual achievement and begins to represent continuity. Many buyers think about their children, their grandchildren, the story that will be told along with the timepiece. It's almost like planting a tree knowing that you may never sit in its shade. Few have this maturity, and the brand knows it. A practical example helps bring this to reality. Think of families who preserve letters, historic properties, or businesses for generations. The value lies not only in the item itself, but in the narrative it carries. Patek works the same way. And when someone begins to realize that true luxury lies in thinking beyond one's own life, they understand why this watch occupies such a different place in the world of status. And it is precisely this difference that places it at the absolute top of invisible luxury, the subject of the next topic. Did you like it, or do you want to adjust something before continuing? Why Patek Philippe is considered the pinnacle of invisible luxury. Here, luxury changes frequency. While many brands shout status with glitz, size, and logo, Patek whispers. It was made to go unnoticed by ordinary eyes and, precisely for that reason, to be recognized only by those who live on the same level of symbolic interpretation. It's the kind of object that doesn't ask for external validation. It exists for those who understand the game from the inside. The curious thing is that this invisible aspect doesn't diminish its value. On the contrary, it multiplies it. The fewer people who recognize it, the stronger the signal becomes among equals. It's like a silent password in a crowded room. Two glances meet, a detail on the wrist is noticed, and nothing more needs to be said. This is the luxury that doesn't compete, doesn't explain, and isn't compared. It simply is. An everyday example helps illustrate this. Think of someone who doesn't need to talk about money, because their time, choices, and tranquility already reveal everything. Patek operates on this same logic. It doesn't accelerate, it doesn't draw attention, and it doesn't follow trends. And when someone realizes that the pinnacle of luxury isn't the most visible, but the most silent, they begin to understand why, paradoxically, this timepiece might become even more unattainable in the future. Want to move on to the next topic, or adjust something here? The future of the brand. Why it may become even more impossible to buy a Patek. Looking ahead, everything indicates that access to a Patek isn't going to get any easier. Quite the opposite. The number of wealthy people is growing, interest in timeless items is increasing, but production remains practically the same. The brand doesn't chase the market. It forces the market to slow down. In a world obsessed with speed, this stance almost provokes irritation, and at the same time, fascination. Another point that is rarely discussed is the change in mindset of the new generations of high-net-worth individuals. Many young billionaires no longer just want to show off. They want legacy, history, and something that will outlive the hype itself. This puts Patek in an even more privileged position because it doesn't compete for attention with fleeting trends. It offers permanence, and the faster the world changes, the rarer it becomes for those who can wait. A mentor might say, "We're witnessing a curious phenomenon. The clock that measures time is now being bought by those who have learned to respect it. And this filter tends to become more rigorous, not more flexible. The future points to less access, more criteria, and even more silence. And when this perception sets in, an inevitable reflection arises about time, choices, and the kind of legacy each person is building. Exactly the hook that connects all of this to the beginning of our story. Did you like it, or would you like to adjust something before we move on? What does this watch reveal about you, and about your time? After all this, one question remains. What have you been doing with your time? Because at its core, this was never a story about watches, billionaires, or extreme luxury. It's a story about choices, about those who chase immediate rewards, and those who build something that lasts for decades. Patek simply exposes an uncomfortable truth. Those who don't know how to wait rarely sustain anything great. Now think honestly. Have you been acting like someone who wants everything right now, or like someone who accepts the process, the silence, and the invisible construction? In what areas of your life have you been looking for shortcuts? Career, money, relationships, purpose? What if the real leap wasn't about accelerating, but about aligning attitude, vision, and patience? If this content made you reflect, provoked discomfort, or changed the way you see success, then it fulfilled its purpose. And this is just the beginning. Here on the channel, we talk about invisible power, long-term mindset, money, time, and the decisions that separate those who only dream from those who truly build. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue learning how to play the game that almost no one explains to you. Because in the end, it's not about having more things. It's about becoming someone capable of supporting themselves with them.